Everyone, I'm so pleased to be have the opportunity to join with you today and for such an incredible representation across our wonderful country. I'm going to be speaking today about how planned infrastructure renewal projects can be informed by a sustainable neighborhood strategy so that they can achieve multiple objectives in the community and build greater support for their implementation. I'm going to draw from a couple of case studies in our SNAP program and share some lessons learned. Just to start with, I'm going to, having technical difficulties getting the slide moved to the next one.
Sorry, it might not be working today. If you want to just click on the arrow above your slide.
Okay, got it. Alex still needs some help. It's not working.
Okay. Here,
Can you?
Yep.
Okay.
Here we go. Go ahead.
Great. So I just wanted to acknowledge that municipalities across Canada are facing the challenges associated with aging infrastructure and keeping pace with maintenance and replacement cycles. And then on top of that, this same infrastructure is even more vulnerable to the severe weather events that we've been experiencing. And so I think we're all looking for innovative approaches to help address some of the barriers that are hindering our progress at replacing and maintaining this infrastructure. And funding, of course, is one big challenge, so I think we're looking for opportunities to bring new funding partners to the table and just ways to collaborate so that we can address the challenges of dealing with multiple players and perhaps competing or conflicting interests. So moving to the next slide, in the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, we have been working together with our municipal partners to bring a neighborhood perspective to the development of integrated infrastructure renewal projects. And we've been doing this through the SNAP program, and SNAP stands for Sustainable Neighborhood Retrofit Action Plan, and it is a neighborhood-based solution for sustainable urban renewal and climate action. And what we've been finding through this SNAP approach is that we've been able to bring efficiencies in achieving multiple outcomes, drawing a lot of community support and excitement, and building innovative partnerships for implementation. The SNAP program is very partnership-based, and the next slide shows an overview of a number of the partners that we work with, certainly our municipal partners, but also a whole variety of other private and public sector groups. We have 6 SNAPs in the Greater Toronto Area, and the next map shows locations of our 6 neighborhood projects that we have been working on. But we are also growing this network. There are additional communities who we are in discussions with in adding new SNAPs, both within our jurisdiction. And over the past year, we have actually been starting to provide a planning and advisory service to groups outside of our jurisdiction. The next slide gives an illustration of some of the typical action areas within our neighborhood SNAPs. And today I will be speaking about our public infrastructure projects. But besides that, we also work on locally tailored home retrofit programs that are driving increased uptake in home retrofit actions. And we've been working on new partnerships for multi-unit residential and institutional and commercial properties and revitalization of those spaces that are often very important privately owned public spaces. And then we work at the neighborhood-wide scale to bring together communities, strengthen their networks, cross-promote their participation in these other programs, and contribute to greater community resilience. So as I said, today I'm going to be focusing on a few examples of our public realm renewal work. And the next slide speaks to how do we define integrated infrastructure projects. And so in the words of one of our municipal partners, integrated design means better projects with multiple benefits. And I think at the core of our definition is that concept of multiple outcomes, multiple objectives that are being addressed through a more integrated design. And some of the other benefits that our municipal partners have cited describing these projects are the opportunity to reduce costs by any one individual department, and that can be through opportunities to cost share with other partners. And the one I really like is just community happiness and approval. So we'll get started with the first case study, and this is the Glencrest Park Renewal project. It's in the Bayview Glen Snap neighborhood in Markham, and this is a 1960s neighborhood that has been experiencing some local flooding issues. And so a few years ago, the city of Markham started a major flood remediation project, and they asked TRCA to work with them to develop a SNAP in this neighborhood as a way of engaging residents and getting more participation on their properties, and also to advance other sustainability objectives that the city has in its Green Print sustainability strategy for Markham. So the next slide gives you a closer picture of what Glencrest Park looked like. And one of the water department's flood remediation projects would have involved replacing a storm sewer pipe that passed through Glencrest Park with a bigger pipe. And they would have undertaken the construction of that sewer pipe and replaced the grass in this aging park just as they found it. But through the SNAP action plan, we were able to learn that the residents in the area were very interested in having an updated park. And in speaking, and then we also identified a number of other sustainability objectives that could be achieved through this space. We met with the Parks Department, and we learned that they were interested, but they only had a very small budget available that had to be dedicated to replacing the playground equipment to make it more accessible. But we were able to work together with the partners, and the next slide shows a whole multifunctional design that we were able to create. And this incorporated a rain garden that commemorated a historic stream that used to flow through this park. It incorporated improved stormwater management function to address not just flood control, but quality and erosion control functions as well. Hundreds of naturalization plantings, pollinator gardens, a meditation garden, which really reflected the interests and the new demographic of the new community that lives in this area. And we were able to identify an opportunity to take advantage of the construction access road that would be built for the sewer project and use that as a base for a new trail system in the park. And, of course, we incorporated the fully accessible playground.
Look, it's going fun everywhere.
So the next slide speaks to the question of, so how did we pay for this? So because this was an integrated, multi-objective project, we were able to bring other funding partners to the table. The RBC Blue Water Grant, we were able to secure and apply it to the rain garden features. The TRCA, we have environmental regeneration budgets, and because this project now incorporated a lot of renaturalization, we were able to contribute funding toward that. And even in the city of Markham, they found there were other departments that saw an interest in this project. And so the next slide shows the breakdown of the city of Markham component. And in the end, the Parks Department only actually contributed 23% of the total cost of this brand new revived park. So this was just an example of how, through the collaborative approach and incorporating multiple objectives, there was a really great story for how a number of the groups achieved their objectives. And the next slide just shows some photos of what the park looks like.
Wow.
So moving on to our second case study. This is the County Court Boulevard Bioswale, and it's in County Court SNAP neighborhood in Brampton. The County Court Boulevard is the main loop street or road that passes through this 1980s subdivision. And the next slide gives you a street level view of this road. So at the City of Brampton, it's the environmental planner who is our main liaison person for the SNAP project, and his role is really to integrate sustainability and connects with a number of different departments. So he became aware that the roads department was planning a regular road resurfacing project, and so he was able to work together with us and the roads department and several other city departments, and we brought to bear some of the other objectives that had emerged from the Sustainable Neighborhood Action Plan. And what we learned here is that the right-of-way, the road right-of-way, was an opportunity to incorporate other sustainability objectives, such as improved stormwater management and urban forest targets. And what we heard from the residents in this very typical 1980s subdivision in suburbia was there was just a desperate interest in creating a sense of community and getting to meet their neighbors and having more of a community identity. And we felt that a lot of that could be accomplished through inspired designs in the public realm. And so the next slide shows how we were able to work together with a number of city departments and other TRCA departments to design a biofilter swale system that would be installed alongside the road resurfacing project. And so because it was an integrated design that incorporated other stormwater management objectives, the city was able to access some gas tax funding as well as work just within the original, the contingency budget of the original roads resurfacing capital budget in order to pay for this additional bioswale. We were able to access grants from Tree Canada and TD Friends of the Environment to pay for a lot of additional tree plantings along the road right-of-way. And we brought in students from the local school to help with the planting and really foster that community ownership and engagement. And so this is, again, a story of another little case study, well, another case study in the same neighborhood, and I don't have a lot of time to go into it in detail, but I did just want to acknowledge this is the Upper Nine Stormwater Pond, which is a high priority for a retrofit project for the city of Brampton. And in the next slide, what you'll see is by taking a neighborhood approach through this SNAP action plan, we identified that the next door, the neighboring private golf course was actively looking for a new source of irrigation water for its golf course. And so we were able to work with the city to design a pond retrofit concept that could make stormwater available to the next door golf course as a source of irrigation water supply. And we also incorporated additional plantings and naturalization work that contributes to the neighborhood's urban forest targets and community amenities that create this place as a local destination for people to go for walks, meet their neighbors, have more interactions. And so in so doing, creating more incentives for active living and community connections to really strengthen that sense of community. And the EA study, the city has the environmental assessment study underway this year, and they're anticipating construction of this next year. And the golf course has continued to be interested and at the table, so we're really quite excited about this project. So just moving on then, what have we learned? We are really excited about these projects. We feel they've been very successful, but they have not been easy. As with anything new, there were a lot of obstacles along the way and a lot of things that we had to figure out as we went along. And so as a team, we felt it was very important to step back and identify what worked, what didn't, what could we do differently to really facilitate making more of our projects a more an integrated approach. So we hired Ashley Good of Fail Forward, and I would just comment, I actually met Ashley at the FPM Sustainable Communities Conference in Ottawa a year ago, and that was just a really, really fantastic place to connect with some great expertise. And so what Ashley was able to do was to come in and conduct one-on-one interviews with a number of project partners from different municipal departments and different TRCA departments, and then bring us all together as a full group to pull out some common lessons learned about the barriers and enablers of these integrated infrastructure projects, and then draw some recommendations. So we identified 8 barriers, and I'm not going to go through all of them one by one, but I'm just going to pick out a few to draw to your attention. The first one, what we learned is when infrastructure projects are too far along the planning and approvals process, it really is more difficult to broaden their scope or incorporate design changes. And the example is when a project has already been approved through an EA study, to change its design function would require an EA amendment, and that just may be creating unacceptable delays for the original project. So what we identified and learned here is that the earlier in the strategic planning process and master planning process you can identify the opportunity to take a more integrated approach, the more flexibility you will have to incorporate really neat things. And having that internal facilitator or coordinator who can move across and between departments was really, really instrumental in both of these case study projects. That was a really instrumental position to make this stuff happen. The second example of a barrier was departmental silos and inflexible work plans. And what we found is if a given department didn't happen to have a project priority that it was working on that year in that location, they didn't have the capacity, or perhaps they didn't have the willingness to sit at the table and participate in another department's project. They tended to have the attitude, well, it's their project. And so where we really, really did rely on and need all the expertise to be brought to the table, it was sometimes hard for that other department to make the time to be there. So we identified there does need to be a clear mandate and sort of corporate culture for integrated projects that allows departments to have that flexibility to take advantage of these kinds of opportunities to advance their own mutual objectives. And I'll maybe just jump down to the bottom, the buy-in and ownership of project objectives. And this is a really, really interesting one. What we're finding is with these new approaches and innovative integrated projects, they often do create new roles or new relationships between different departments and partners. and that can sometimes make ownership of the project ambiguous. So it is really important to be aware of that, and sometimes the individuals don't necessarily want to accept those new roles, so you have to be aware of that as well. So we're recommending sometimes it's good to infuse regular staff teams with people outside who bring an innovation mindset and can help create that excitement of a team that's doing something really neat, and to work together and develop a shared vision and responsibilities as a group. And the next slide, I'll just highlight a couple of additional barriers as well. The first is we did face concerns that projects could be more expensive and time-consuming than normal. And these could be perceived concerns, but they can also be very real. But I guess we also have to recognize it may not be a bad thing that they're more expensive, because it might be a greater outcome and more that's being delivered by that project. But what we found really enabled us to do this was the community engagement that was really building the excitement and support for trying something new. And in a couple of cases, we did develop business cases to bring the science and the numbers to bear to show that the resulting project would achieve greater outcomes. The number 6 barrier was just we observed that different stakeholders and different departments and different agencies have different levels of risk aversion or risk tolerance versus optimism. And this sort of also comes down to types of people who see things as a glass half empty or a glass half full and have a different sense of willingness to put in effort to overcome obstacles. So we see the SNAP as a place to pilot these new projects, perhaps in a more safe environment. And it was really, really important to openly discuss concerns that people had, because other members of the team may be able to share experience that could provide some comfort or create a contingency plan that made people feel safer to move forward. And I think the very last one is my favorite. You don't know what you don't know. When you're trying something brand new for the first time, you have to accept that there's going to be some surprises and just be adaptive, build some buffers into the project timeline, and you are going to have to make some sacrifices along the way, but keep focused on the key goals that you committed to, and you can still be seen to be moving the yardsticks. And so just to sum up, we did draw forward some recommendations in the next slide and these are some recommendations that are geared kind of more at a corporate level, and I won't go through them all because I think I've touched on a few of them already, but the first one is really, really important. We found that we need to create a process for identifying integrated project opportunities much earlier at the planning and at the strategic planning stage. And I'll be speaking to this in a minute, but we actually have started to work with our municipal partners to develop and test out a process for integrating a number of different master plans and priorities across a broad range of sustainability objective areas, and to look for the alignment of where we see multiple priorities occurring in a given location that might suggest an opportunity for a more integrated approach. And also, of those areas, maybe some of them would be very conducive to a neighborhood scale planning approach. So we are starting to work on that. And just kind of at the very end of the list there, I will say that we also have collected a number of lessons learned that really apply more at a project management scale, and we're hoping to compile that as a checklist that we can share with others. So just in conclusion then, I wanted to say that I really believe planned infrastructure renewal projects can be leveraged to achieve greater impact and just help us move the yardsticks on our many priorities for infrastructure renewal and sustainability and climate action. And the SNAP's neighborhood strategy, we believe it can really be a helpful way to inform these designs and build community engagement and support for implementation. And there are some enabling factors that we need to be aware of that can really help these kinds of projects realize their full potential. So what's next for us? I already mentioned a bit about this neighborhood screening process that we're pilot testing to try and identify these integrated project opportunities earlier. And we've also been really honored to be invited by FCM to deliver a SNAP session at the upcoming Sustainable Communities Conference in February in Ottawa. And I really sincerely hope that I can meet all of you there. So thank you very much. I wanted to show the various partners we have involved in the SNAP program in the last slide. And I've listed our website and another reference of an article we published in Renew Canada where if you'd like to learn more about the case studies, and by all means you're welcome to email me if you would like to follow up with more information. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Sonya. I really appreciate it. Well, we have a couple of questions from the audience, and if you have any more questions, don't hesitate to send them along. Unfortunately, Sonya, I think that somebody's speaking near your microphone. Is that possible?
No, I'm the only one in my room.
Okay. If anyone has their telephone on audio, you could just put the mute button on. That would be great. Thank you. So first of all, somebody was wondering if you are familiar with the Google Sidewalk Lab project on the Toronto waterfront. Do you know about that project?
No, I don't, but I can certainly ask around, and if they wanted to email me, I can try and put them in touch with somebody who might know about it. Okay,
that sounds good. The second question is with regards to who chooses the SNAPs. So is it the citizens or the cities that come forward with an idea?
This is a great question and the one we often are asked. When we started the SNAP program, I guess came from an observation that I had at TRCA of the long list of challenges we were seeing in undertaking retrofits in older urban areas, and I saw our municipalities had similar long lists, and I felt that we needed to work together at a neighborhood scale as a strategy to try and overcome some of these challenges. And just practically speaking, I felt that a neighborhood action plan, in order to really fully work and address some of the really deep, big retrofits that cross public and private property boundaries, we absolutely needed the municipality to be at the table. And in my own circumstance, we get our funding from our municipal partners, so I felt it had to be a priority for the municipality. So we did reach out, and this is kind of our philosophy. We work with the municipalities to identify where they have alignment of a lot of priorities of their own, for whether it be stormwater infrastructure renewal projects or water efficiency or sanitary sewer II or anything. And then we usually identify a short list of neighborhoods, and then we look at community interest and activity in those areas. And we go talk to community leaders and councillors and look for a neighborhood where there is interest on the part of the community to be involved in that sort of a project. So that's kind of how our first set of SNAP neighborhoods were selected. And I would continue to advocate that future SNAPs need to be selected based on that combination of interests where, and I always say, the SNAP is about aligning municipal priorities with community interests and bringing them together to work collaboratively for for integrated solutions.